Hi, and welcome to the Kelly Kitley Podcast, America's Social Worker Unfiltered, where every week I have hopeful, honest, and deeply human conversations with changemakers. And today I am so excited to introduce you to my guest, Keesha Scott, who is the co founder of Guardian Recovery. She is also the National Adolescent Care Director of Guardian Recovery, the host of Cake for Dinner podcast, and the author of the forthcoming book, Cake for Dinner. She is a woman in long term recovery with over 2 decades of sobriety, a wife, and a mom of three. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
So, a lot of things I want to jump into right off the bat as we transition into the upcoming school year, and selfishly, something that I was really interested in talking to you about is just being a woman in long-term recovery and having our own children, and who may be experimenting with drugs and alcohol and maybe fall into that problematic area.
Mhm.
I guess my first direct question is, how did you expose your kids and educate them about substance use disorder? Because I know you have a long history of experience with that, both personally and professionally.
Yeah, so I'm doing it a second time around now with my 12-year-old, and I think that's probably a better way to do it. My twins are almost 20. Their father died of a drug overdose when they were 3. So I got off to a rocky start with the topic of addiction, and it was really I was very fearful around how they would feel about that, that would mean to them. And I have a very loving family. No one in my family, my immediate family, is an alcoholic or a drug addict. So to me, that being their story just seemed very scary and negative, obviously. So I didn't share with them for a very long time about my own recovery, which wasn't the best move. I later learned I was open that I don't drink. I go to meetings. I'm sure they didn't think they were Alcoholics Anonymous meetings.
Work
They knew I
meeting.
didn't drink. Yeah, they knew I didn't drink. But to answer your question, when they were around 15 and they started to sort of experiment with going to parties and, whatever they're doing at that age.
Yeah.
And I started to worry. I realized that like the best parenting trick I have up my sleeve is my sobriety, truly, because they would say things like, Mom, you don't understand. All the kids get to go, all the kids get to stay late. And when I started hearing like things like, you don't understand, it's like really hard. Everybody's trying it. And I
Mhm.
was thinking, oh no, you know what? I really do understand what it's like to be in a room full of people doing something and not engaging. Nobody knows better than me. So when they were 16, maybe around 16, I took them to get my 20-year medallion.
Oh,
And I prepped them a little bit, and took them, all 3 of my kids, they sat front row. I received the medallion. And if you're not familiar with AA, you stand up and you say a few things. And all 3 of them were in the front row crying. And I just knew then that the right thing to do was just to be authentic about who I am. But I think that that is a slippery slope for sober parents because you're kind of afraid you're going to give them a permission slip to do a bunch of dumb shit. And then they're going to be like, but you obviously did it.
right,
Like,
right.
So I don't think I did it so great. Eventually I told them my 12-year-old has obviously been in the know for a long time and it's a different experience.
Well, and his dad is in recovery as well, correct?
Right. So my second husband, which is his biological father, is sober a long time also,
Mhm.
and never really got my whole like secret sobriety thing. But he was on board. So we're much more open with Ford, and as a result, I just think it's going to be a more like sort of like natural roll into hard conversations.
Sure, sure. And you guys are in the business of recovery. So there's that is just a natural conversation too. And your twins who are going to be 20, you have been open and not wanting to, I guess for my own sake of protecting his anonymity, but more so of how did you navigate when you knew it was time to help him get the treatment that he needed? And sometimes, for parents who are listening today, that fine line of, well, is this normal behavior or not? And maybe it was more clear for you with your son, but obviously it doesn't go from 0 to 100 overnight.
Yeah, I mean, look, it really wasn't clear. And I had so many mixed feelings around that period of time. My twins are boy-girl twins. I've, spoken to them at length because I do have a memoir coming out, and there's a lot of details about both of them in the book, and both of them have given me their blessing that I can share these stories. Specifically, my son, his answer was, "Mom, I'm proud of my journey, and you can say whatever you want." So I'm
Wow.
still, it's still nerve-wracking for me, but nonetheless, my twins, when they were young, 15, 16, 17, my daughter was buck wild. And I really felt, that she was going to be the one to struggle. So all my attention was on her. I was just constantly, watching her and worried about her. And my son, in fact, didn't drink much through high school because he had this major stomach problem. So often he would be the designated driver for his friends. I would constantly get calls from other kids' parents about how polite my son was and how great he was. And never really got those calls about my daughter. And she was, really experimenting. And my son would often keep an eye on her. They're twins, so they would be together a lot. And he would call me from parties. So.
And they hung out in the same friend group.
Yeah, sometimes
Okay.
a lot, sleepovers were a fucking disaster because, you have to worry about what's upstairs. You've got a few girls and a few boys,
Sure.
so it's like I had to sleep with one eye open through that period of time. But, I don't think I write in my book as a chapter called "You Can't Outparent Genetics." And, genetics, it's a tricky thing, so I had my eyes on her. She's sort of like, led with the kind of stereotypical personality traits that would end up in drug and alcohol treatment,
Mm-hmm.
she kind of got it all out of her system, and she teaches Pilates now. So, I mean, such a wild twist of fate. And my son, who didn't lead with any of that stuff,
Gosh.
he started drinking his senior year in high school, and very quickly he went downhill. The thing that was tricky is that other families look in and they don't have as much expertise in the field, right? They're either not alcoholics, they don't work in the field. So I did feel a little judged that I was maybe doing too much too soon.
Okay. Sure.
But, I think I knew, okay, let me turn this up. I knew, for years, like he did have the little bit of the secrecy and the dark stuff. And he was extremely painfully shy. And so like he had big emotions, and, I turned a blind eye to things because I didn't want that to be the reality. I think parents can relate to having the one kid who's going to be the shining star and be the example of their parenting. And for me, it was him. And so the idea that there could be something going wrong here was just not acceptable to me.
Sure.
And I also think because his dad died of a drug overdose and he looks very much like him, I had my own trauma around that entire thing. So a long answer to the question is, it was all very difficult. It was very complex. And I don't think there's one way to do it. But to lean on your specific reference about, is it normal? Kids are all doing it. That kept me out of helping him for a long time, because I do think teenagers experiment. In fact, every person that I partied with when I was younger is a successful, normal adult, and they were all doing what I was doing. So I think it's hard. I think it's more about the emotions and the feelings associated rather than the activities. I
Oh,
think a lot of kids drink. I think a lot of kids get drunk. I
yes.
think a lot of kids do dumb shit, even drink and drive. Hopefully not, but I do think they do.
Yeah.
I don't think all kids that do those things are crippled with anxiety and feelings of guilt and shame and secrecy. And there's a darker, heavier weight around someone who's going to end up with a substance use problem from where I stand.
Sure. I mean, that is so important. The feelings and the behaviors associated with the activity of drinking or drugging. And is your son sober today?
My son he's about a year and a half sober.
Oh my gosh. And what is his relationship? Because I think for people who are young and in recovery, I know that from speaking to other guests who got sober at a young age, there is this difference, in terms of how it is navigating that. I mean, I went to my first AA meeting at 19 and was like, "Oh, no way," and didn't get sober till I was 35. So I think having young people around you in recovery is so important too.
Well, he lives in LA, so I think that, the sober community out there is maybe a little bit cooler and fun. I will say he's not convinced that he's an alcoholic.
Okay.
His idea, and that is, I don't want to say the problem, but that is something that comes along with early intervention. If you read the book of Alcoholics Anonymous or you talk to, you know, alcoholics that are my age or your age,
Yeah.
majority of us went down hard, right? Like my parents didn't even know what sobriety was. So like it took a lot for people to be like, oh, you have a problem.
Mhm.
Well, we intervened at 18 years old and
Right.
he didn't even start drinking till his senior year. So there wasn't a lot of information to work with. The
Mhm.
information that was there was clear to me. However, it's not so clear to him. And so his idea is, look, I don't know whether I am or not, or what I need to call myself. What I know is that there's no room for drugs and alcohol in my life if I want to be successful and healthy. And I
Oh,
like my life.
okay.
So for me, I mean, that's a win, and my goal from the beginning was to show him a life that would be so great that when he decided to roll the dice or not,
Mhm.
he might not want to take the risk. And that's where we are. So for me, I feel like, I've done, the best I could do.
Sure. And, I mean, knowing that we are also powerless over our own children in a lot of ways, that
Oh,
we might have all the experience and all the knowledge, and yet still, especially with three children, there's a likelihood, or in my case, four children, that one of them may, walk that fine line. So,
yeah, and what somebody said to me actually recently that just like really touched me was he said, Mom, like a lot of guys in here, they think like sobriety like is gonna suck and it's gonna be so boring and it's gonna be awful. And he's like, the one advantage I have is I was raised by you guys, and Dad is cool. He has a lot of hobbies. He has a good life. He's in shape. So like I thought, holy shit, like the way we lead really matters because he's looking at a whole life. I mean, we have co-founded a huge company. We've done all these things based on our sobriety, truly. you
right,
know so
right.
he's watched that, so he's like, all right, if I'm going to do it, it doesn't look that bad, guys, trust me.
Sure. Good modeling. I love
Yeah,
that.
I think that's important.
So speaking of co-founding this company
Mhm.
and, being in business with your husband,
Mhm.
how do you navigate that in conjunction with all of this other stuff that you're doing with, the podcast that you started and the memoir that you're writing? I mean, we live full lives, and it's also reminding me of, addiction is addiction is addiction, right? Like I want more, I want to do it well. I have this gift now and this, ability to do these things, and you're very passionate about it. I mean, that is
Mhm.
so real. How do you balance all of that, and how have you made that shift?
Not well. I mean, I don't think that I don't really even believe in balance. I don't even know what that is. I just get up every day and do my best. I'm not super wired for rigidity. Like sometimes I get it right in the fitness area, sometimes I don't. Sometimes I wake up early, sometimes I don't. As far as the company, my husband runs the company. He has a partner. We have, I think, 800 employees. I am just a small part of that. I oversee the Adolescent program, which is really my true love. I love a troubled teen. But I don't know. Some days I leave work and I'm on fire. Maybe I've interviewed someone amazing, or I've helped a family get their teenager into treatment, and I feel so great. And then I get to my car and I look at my phone, and all three kids have called me. I forgot to pick up my son from camp. Nobody's eaten, So I wouldn't call that balance, but we're living, we're thriving, and we're helping, which I feel like is the most important thing to me.
Hmm. Well, and that's your truth is also how authentic you are in showing up, and it is messy, and that's where we
Totally
learn.
messy.
And we talked a little bit when I was a guest on your podcast about the process of writing a memoir. What has that been like for you? As I get to interview you now, and you were asking me what it was like, and shared a little bit of your experience.
I mean, it's a really wild experience, frankly. I don't know, maybe the book's been four or five other books before this book. I at one point was going to write a menopause book, and then I realized I don't have enough expertise in that area. It was more going to be funny about all the things that we experience. And then, I vacillated between like a parenting guide and then a memoir. And it was hard for me to land because I don't really want to tell people what or how to do it. I really do want to say how I did it,
Sure. Mhm.
and some of that's going to be inspirational, some of it's going to be funny, and some of it's going to be a what not to do guide, you
Mhm.
know. But I just ultimately landed on what felt most true and authentic to me. The writing process wasn't really that hard. The way I function is I do a lot in my head before. I've written so much in my head that by the time I put, pen to paper or my computer, it flowed.
Yeah.
The part that has been difficult for me is reading it back. I put it in an app that reads to you,
Mhm.
and I've just sobbed in my office, like
Yeah.
the things that I have been through that I just went through. I don't know, like I've never really stopped to like acknowledge that I've been through some tough things because there frankly wasn't time. I was a single mom. My husband died. I had to raise babies.
Yeah.
Um, this experience has really made me proud of myself and grateful for where I landed and grateful for my sobriety and my husband. I mean, things could have gone really rough, and I don't know, it's so sad to say, but it took this book for me to really stop and be like, oh, wow, like I've been through a lot. And, because I did have a little imposter syndrome happening. Like, do I have the right to write a book? Like, should I be even telling anybody about parenting? And after reading the book back, I have felt so right to write a book, and so comfortable in sharing my story.
Mhm.
Um, but it's been emotional for sure. And then it's also like a little weird, like that you're going to put this stuff in black and white. It's
Yeah.
different to say it,
Yeah. Well, I love what you said about, not feeling like you need to tell people how to do it, but share your story because we're both master's level clinicians. And so having the knowledge, like for me, so much of my recovery was in other women's stories.
Yeah.
That's what I glommed onto. Like, show me how to do it. Tell me what it was like for you because I had all the knowledge,
Yeah.
from my training and like I didn't dodge the bullet there, or, it
Yeah.
was through storytelling. And I guess, you've been so open about your relationship with your dad and how the two of you are so close, and also how that represents cake for dinner in some way. Am I getting that right? Can you talk
Yeah.
to us about that
So
story?
before my husband passed away, when I was 6 weeks pregnant with twins, he left. And, I mean, any woman who's been pregnant listening doesn't need much of an explanation to understand how traumatic that was. Um, and I had lost some weight. I was struggling to be pregnant, really. I mean, it was horrific. And I was a pharmaceutical rep at the time, and I went and stayed with my parents during the remainder of the pregnancy. And my dad, in effort to help me, keep some weight on, he would bake me homemade German chocolate cakes. And I literally, which I'm sure that much sugar is not recommended for a pregnancy, but that time it was like dire straits. And he would make me German chocolate cake through the whole pregnancy. And he would go with me to work sometimes and ride in the passenger seat and just like read the New York Times when I would go into the offices. And, I just wanted to give him a nod in the title because, I'm just so grateful to have such a great dad. And sometimes I shy away from expressing that too much because I know not everybody has that, as a reality. But this book is super meaningful to me. And I feel like, the title very much reflects my relationship with him.
I love that.
Great.
Getting teary-eyed. Because that is special, and I want you to celebrate that. That is such a special relationship. Especially for someone like myself who didn't have that kind of relationship with their dad.
And I will also say that, like, a lot of people, after I've done a lot of interviews, and people say, "What about your mom?" Because we
Uh-huh.
always hear about your
Yeah.
dad. The thing that's important to note about my mom is that I was a troubled teen, and I was a very, very difficult teenager. And my mom saw right away the relationship I had with my dad, and she just leaned into it. She always, always supported the relationship I had with my dad, and she still does. Even now, at 52 years old, if something goes wrong, I call, "Is dad there?" And she knows. And she's so loving and so supportive. And I do believe that I wouldn't have gotten through that time as a teenager had she not done the supportive part. Because sure, he showed up as his natural, amazing self. But I think there's a lot of dynamics, family dynamics, where that might not have been so acceptable, or the mom could have felt, jealous,
Sure.
uh,
Sure.
or resentful or whatever, because she was always the bad guy when I was a teenager, and she just let him shine. And I'm so grateful for that. And I try to utilize that now in my own parenting, because a troubled teen is hard to raise, and you have to step out of the box, think out of the box.
Mhm.
And really, whoever that kid will listen to is who you lead with, period.
Yeah, absolutely. And who was that for your son?
Probably me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now it's turned out to be my husband, which has been a hard thing for me to swallow. I'm like, what? I've done this for 18 years and now you're going to call him? But I try to remember my mom and channel my mom. And because it's a whole lifetime you raise a person, right? So whoever they're connecting with, whoever, they're reaching out to, then it's like, all right, you're up.
Mhm.
And a healthy family, I think leads that way.
And how did you, because like you said, you're not rigid. You um seemingly parent with no script, right? None of us do. You have
Yeah.
three very different kids, but you've
Mhm.
adapted to what their needs are. And, did they go to a traditional public high school, the older two? And how have you navigated each one of their needs that may have been so different that might not be traditional college? Because sometimes I feel like parents that I work with, that grief of like, that's not the way I thought it was going to be. And it's
Yeah.
not. How do I
Yeah. I think truthfully, if parents are trying to maximize, you know, to really lean into kids, what they're good at, and really create the best version of that kid possible, you have to parent differently. I mean, from the time my twins were little, I can remember, I don't know, maybe they were 3, 4, 5. I would go into his room. He'd have all of his Legos perfectly lined up. And if one crashed or broke, he would have a panic attack. So I'd have to say, yeah, fuck it. Let's crack, break them open. It's not a big deal. We'll rebuild them. It's not that it's not the end of the world. And I would have to be sort of that way. And then I'd go in her room and it would look like literally like a department store had blown up, and it was just shit everywhere. And she was, wild and disorganized, and, you know, also creative. So I would in her room have to be like, hey, in order for you to be your best self, you should probably make your bed, clean your room. You're going to have more room for this like creativity. So it's like you have to, or I learned when they were very young, and I do think that's the benefit of twins is they're two different people. So you
Oh,
learn that
right, right, right.
they're bathing at the same time, sleeping at the same time, eating at the same time. You have to parent them differently.
Mhm.
So all of my kids required something totally different. My son, as I've mentioned, was kind of a straight arrow, and he went to a, a private parochial school all the way through high school. He went to a private Catholic high school and did fine. You know, he followed the rules, stayed in the lines for the most part. My daughter, I don't know, maybe she tried 5 middle schools. It was everyone was a bigger disaster than the next.
Mhm.
And one day in 9th grade, I just thought, well, fuck this. I picked her up. I said, we're not doing this anymore. Like, I don't feel like doing this. You
Yeah.
don't feel like doing this. And so I homeschooled her the rest of high school. And she thrived. She did so terrible in the school system. She's dyslexic. She has OCD. And as much as the schools tried, because they did, the school system is just not made for kids that have different struggles. It really isn't. It doesn't fit, it doesn't work. And she always struggled. And now she's done with high school. She came to us and was like, look, guys, I'm not going to college. And we were like, no problem. Like, I didn't want to do that shit with her either. It was like, it was so difficult for her. And all school did for her, it was like showing up to work every day and being bad at it. All it did for her was decrease her self-esteem every single year. And now at 19, she is thriving. She's finding what she's good at, where she feels good, and she's leaning into that. So, I didn't think for 1 minute that that was the bad avenue for her. And my son is in college. He's in sober living in LA and he is in college.
Okay.
Again, it's like, he's a pretty traditional guy. And then my 12-year-old is starting this new school called Alpha. I don't know if you're familiar, but
Oh,
it's an AI generated school that's opening in the town I'm in. It started in Austin, Texas. And they spend 2 hours in the morning in academics and the rest of the day is life skills. And it is so amazing.
my
Not cheap, not
gosh.
cheap,
Yeah, of course.
but so amazing. And so I feel like my job in life as a parent is to show them their deficiencies. We work on them for 18 years until, it's time for them to leave. And then you spend the rest of their life helping them with them, but also lean into the areas that they, excel naturally
Sure.
and the things they like and nourish that stuff. And, if I could do it over again, I would have led with that out of the gate. I spent a lot of time trying to squish them into
Yep,
boxes,
yep.
you
As
know,
we do, as we do, right?
and like you said, I do think, a lot of parents struggle with, it's like the month of August, everyone's graduating or everyone's going to school. In the month of
Yeah.
May, everyone's graduating. You see it all over social media. And that hasn't been my experience. My experience hasn't been a straight line. And there have been times where that made me feel sad, inadequate. But if I'm really honest with myself, and if I lean into the idea that we're raising people, do you know what I mean? Like high school is like
A blip.
this.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So it's like, I want successful people who are nice to other people, who are kind and thoughtful and emotionally sound. That shit you're not learning in school. So
Right,
if
right,
it
right.
works, great. And if it doesn't, great.
I needed this. I mean, to give me a little
You, by the way. Me too. It was a total shit show until I got to this place with it. But by now they're both graduated. So it's like, it didn't
Oh,
help.
Keesha, I mean, I have the chills because I am just watching you and listening to you, and you have lived quite a life. Nine,
Yes.
probably. You've
Yeah.
probably lived 9 lives, and you're still laughing. And you're 52 years old, and you are getting ready to release a book into the world. What is your anticipated launch date?
So my launch date is April 13th, 2027. And I will be doing a bunch of stuff for the next 9 months to bring everybody along the way. So I hope people follow me on Instagram at Keesha W. Scott. And, you can pre order the book now on Amazon, Cake for Dinner.
Amazing. And in the meantime, you have some great guests on your podcast. What is the theme of it? I mean, I know, but what would you like people to take away from listening to some of the episodes that you
I
record?
think it's just unfiltered motherhood and midlife, right? I really want to push back against the perfection culture, this idea that women specifically, you know, that we do it easily or that we balance it and we have a fucking Lululemon outfit on and no wrinkles. Like
Yeah.
it's just not true. And I think it's actually negative. And I want to pass down to the younger generation an authentic package that looks real and that is inviting. You know, in other cultures, people celebrate aging and growing into this wisdom. And I just want to lean into that. I also launched Cake for Dinner Dad Edition because, you know, we also want to hear from the dads. What is their experience?
Sure.
And I interview experts also that sort of look at those areas of parenthood, you know, difficult teens, addiction, emotional stuff, and menopause.
You cover it all. And I mean, you're continuing to grow because people are really glomming on to the information and the conversations that you're having. And that's really exciting because I think our job of educating the general public helps change the conversation, you know, and gives people permission. I don't know why we need it, but we do. When somebody says it, then it's like, oh, she's doing that. Oh, I can do that too. Thanks for saying that. Um,
Yeah. And I would love to take all the credit. I think it's less about me. I think it really, truly is more about where we are right now. And I think my timing just accidentally was amazing. And I think people are really dying for authenticity
mhm,
and truth. And especially moms, we want to hear that it's not easy. You can say it's not easy and love it all at the same time. And so I just think people are resonating with that, you
mhm,
know?
mhm. And two things can be true. You can love being a mom and you can be up to your eyeballs in stress and frustration. And I think, you know, kind of ending this piece of our conversation about this is a season of change and transition, and it's going to be messy no matter, you know, how grounded we might feel. And as we've learned in the rooms, like wear it like a loose garment, right? Like let go a little bit and don't hold on so tightly because I think then we get in the way of ourselves.
Well, as they say in the rooms, let go or be dragged. And, you know, I was drug enough. So hands off.
Love it. So, how many years sober are you today?
24.
Oh my gosh, that is incredible. And how about your husband?
My husband is 15, I think. Don't quote me on that.
Okay,
We're,
okay.
we don't really celebrate as much for him. I don't know why, but I'm a more celebratory person.
And how old is your dad?
My dad is 74.
Okay. And is he local?
Yep, he lives a mile from me.
Oh my gosh. I love milestones. I love age. I love
Me
just,
too. Yeah.
you know,
He's
I don't,
amazing. He's 74. He's as fit as he could be. I mean, my dad is, he's a doctor in exercise science, health physiology. He always likes me to point out that he's not a baker. Um, but, but he is, you know, handsome and fit and creative and, you know, just amazing. I really lucked out in the parent category for sure.
any siblings?
I have three brothers. I struck it rich in the whole family. I actually, in my book, I talk about how nervous I was to tell my story in AA because, you know, you hear stories of difficult childhoods, and I just have a great one. I mean, I really do. My brothers are all handsome and smart and nice, and they love me, and I love them. And, you know, I've had a lot of shitty things go on in my life, but my family is not one of them. And I'm grateful because I think that that foundation is what I had to get back to when I got sober. And I'm grateful that it was there because I think that's a huge struggle with for some people.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. And especially high functioning people who are struggling with alcohol. I mean, in my case, majority of the women that I treat are looking at their alcohol use. And it's like, well, why can't I just think my way out of this? My life is so great, you know, like the rationalizing around it or feeling guilty, like
Oh, totally.
I had such a great life. Like, why am I in
I
this?
had that big time. Like, what's my excuse? I mean, when people read my book, my family has its things, like all families, right? They're not
Absolutely.
perfect.
Right.
I just feel grateful that I was raised in a loving home. We grew up with no money, but my dad used to always tell us that we were rich with love. And at the time we all rolled our eyes, but now we understand as adults what he meant and just the value of that.
Yeah. And what number sibling are you?
I'm second.
And none of your other siblings have struggled with addiction.
No, there's alcoholism and addiction, or alcoholism on both sides of, so my mom's side and my dad's side, but neither my mom or my dad or my brothers.
Okay.
So
Wow.
I'm happy to take it on, to be honest. Do you know what I mean? It's a tough road. I wouldn't want to frankly watch any of them walk it. And honestly, it's led me down the path of helping so many people. So it's not the most fun journey in the beginning, that's for certain. But what else are we here to do? Just get a bunch of shit. I mean, I love to give back. I mean, that's really where you know, I think as a younger person, I was seen as kind of selfish, and becoming a giver,
Uh-huh.
rather than a taker through my sobriety journey has just been the best gift of my life, being able to give back. I mean, I think that's really what makes us probably the most fulfilled.
Mhm.
And so it just took a lot for me to get there, but I'm truly grateful.
So you feel like you're living in your purpose.
Oh, yes. Maybe most now after writing the book and the podcast. I think it's been all like a little like I've been on that path. I got my master's at 40 while I was pregnant because I knew pharmaceuticals wasn't my purpose.
Mhm.
Um, and so getting sober, then getting my master's in psychology, and then founding the company, but truly founding our adolescent program was really where I got invigorated. Like I was like, oh my gosh, like this is my thing. I have to give back to all these moms,
Yeah.
like because raising my daughter was so hard and I didn't really have anybody. And so being able to talk to a mom that's struggling,
Mhm.
it just fills me up. And then that led to writing the book, and then that led to the podcast. And here we are.
Continuing to grow and evolve even in 24, after 24
Yeah.
years of sobriety, because, that's the misconception that I feel responsible to educate people around too,
Sure.
because people think like, oh, you're good. You probably never think about it. Like, you kind of get stagnant, but you're continuing to evolve and change and feel invigorated by the work that you're doing. And that's contagious.
Yeah, and I think, what else are you doing? I mean, my parents are 74 and they're evolving. They read, they listen to podcasts, they talk to other people about different things. They're open. I mean, I hope that at 74 I'm still excited about life.
Mhm. Oh my gosh. Well, you are a wealth of resources, and obviously, all of the links to your podcast, and for people to purchase pre-order your book, and for anybody who is seeking treatment as well. I'm so happy to introduce you to my audience. So thank you.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I love talking to a like-minded woman about like all the stuff that's exciting and important to us. So thank you so much.
Of course. And for everybody listening, just a friendly reminder to be the change you wish to see in the world, whether that starts with you, within your family, your community, or the world. Thanks so much for listening. Have a great day.